But how does a Christian put that together with Romans 13? We're supposed to obey the government, but I guess on this issue, we need to stand up and say no. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're supposed to submit to the authority that God puts in our lives, but it's the same thing with any authority that we're called to submit to. No one can command what God forbids or forbid what God commands. What I like to point out with people, when it comes to Romans chapter 13, is the same guy who wrote that is the guy who was imprisoned in Philippi, and when the walls came tumbling down, demanded that the authorities come there so that he might face them, right? So that he might confront them. There is nothing in Romans 13 that argues that Christians are supposed to submit to illegitimate, unlawful, and ungodly demands from any government. We can't do that. Acts chapter 4, we see Peter and John before the Sanhedrin, right? A legitimate governing body. The Sanhedrin says to them, "You got to stop preaching and teaching in this name." Their response is, "Whether it is right to obey, men rather than God, you be the judge, but we cannot but speak about what we've seen and heard." In other words, do what you got to do, but we will not stop. So again, no one can command what God forbids, and no one can forbid what God commands. No one can demand that we sin.
Amen. Acts 5:29, it is better to obey God than men. We've got Daniel chapter 3, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. No, we won't bow to that
Yeah.
idol. We've got Exodus 1, the Hebrew midwives saying we will not kill those baby boys. And this is what God's people have done throughout history. Yes, there will be a cost, but we need to face it.